You're listening to You Would Think, the Philadelphia Flyers podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Collington, and joining me today is the one and only Kevin Durso. How are you, buddy?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm here. I'm doing all right.
Yeah.
We don't really have a whole lot to talk about. You know, we talked a little bit off the mic about the fact that.
Well, and I'm coming off of a good old 12:30 start yesterday too, which it's been a while since I've had a Saturday afternoon game. I think the last afternoon game that they had, which was their first of the year, we kind of touched on this last week a little bit because it snowed here, so
Right.
I didn't make it. So and you know what? Full disclosure, and I put this on Twitter as well. I didn't even say this to you before we started recording either. I kind of had a rough scheduling week. So I actually didn't even make it 3 home games this week, Monday, Tuesday, Saturday. I only made it to Saturday.
Wow.
So just a couple.
Slacking off, huh?
Nah, it was a couple last minute things. The Monday game at 3:00 in the afternoon is not a recipe for, and it was rescheduled too. That was another part. So,
no, we did chat a little bit about the fact that you were probably not going to that game.
Yes. No, and then I had something last minute kind of pop up on Monday into Tuesday. So Tuesday night was just not in the cards. So I ended up coming back and watching that one. And it wasn't to my surprise, and it certainly wasn't, I guess, to anybody else's surprise. They lost both of those games.
Whoa.
To Carolina and St. Louis.
But you know what? Those are the only 2 losses we have to talk about this week.
Shocking, honestly. I mean, shocking and not.
Right. Like, you figure at some point they're going to put a game together, and then you think about what happened, and we'll touch on this a little bit later, but we had some players returning from injury, and that kind of helped provide a spark in the lineup, as we saw very quickly into that game.
Well, and let's put it this way. For a 10, it wasn't a 10-game winless streak, obviously. This current streak was not, but
pretty close.
For something that was on the way, this one felt more like the 10-gamer of like 3 years ago. You know how many games they had 5 that went to overtime during that one?
Yeah.
They kind of just couldn't finish it off, but
they felt a little more in these games.
Every single one of them.
Yeah.
I mean, pretty much. I mean, and down to the fact that you had lost the 2 that you did to Detroit, and then you were leading Pittsburgh 4-2 with 8 minutes left in the third period. You get a 3-2 lead on Washington with 3:51 left in the third period.
And then you're
playing, you're playing Carolina. It goes to overtime. Well, that's a coin flip. And it legitimately was. I mean, Carolina scored with 18 seconds left in overtime.
That was a good overtime, too.
Yeah. And
there were not a whole lot of stoppages.
And the St. Louis game, it's 2-1 with the net empty. So
yeah, and all of those teams are – I'm pretty sure all of those teams are in playoff spots. I'm pretty sure St. Louis is in, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
By pretty much by plenty, honestly.
Okay, so everyone there is in a divisional playoff spot.
Oh yeah, Washington might not be. I have to double check.
Okay,
Washington's in a little bit of a rut right now.
And these
They've
are
had
teams.
A rough week. But
Well, and you're probably not seeing the best out of these teams because the Flyers are kind of on the soft end of the lineup. I think you've seen some backups here.
Yeah. Okay. So here we go. So who did I say everybody played as we go through this? So Pittsburgh's clearing away. They're second in the Metro.
Yep.
Actually, I think the day the Flyers played them, they were first.
Oh, Washington's the questionable team there.
Yeah.
Huh?
Carolina's in first place in the Metro. Washington's got the last wild card spot right now.
And they're something like 8, 11, and 5 in their last so many. Like, they are not playing well recently.
No, they're not. As a matter of fact, and listen, I know it's end of February. You got all of March and all of April to kind of get it figured out before the playoffs. This is 2 games I've got. They've only played 3 games, by the way, in the last week and a half. They played last Thursday in Philly, had a week off, played Thursday against the Rangers, and then played Saturday.
Yep. And
so that's all there was. So I've seen them twice in their last 3 games in person because, ironically, those were the last 2 games I've seen, Saturdays and the previous Thursdays. This is a team that, for a playoff team, and for one that's pretty likely to make the playoffs, I mean, they're pretty set on –
pretty likely, but with 30 games to go, Columbus and Detroit are both making it interesting.
Well, Detroit really needed to finish off what they were working on
I agree.
Saturday in a totally crazy game.
There were a couple crazy games Saturday. We'll talk about that.
But Detroit was if I go and look at Detroit, the record is now starting to resemble more of where they currently are in a way.
Yeah,
the youth
that's
is
fair.
showing. I mean,
they're still technically worth mentioning in the mathematical race here, but Columbus is the more likely challenger.
Well, yeah, because now that Detroit is below hockey 500, they, the fact that they weren't before, or
good old Bettman 500.
But the fact that they weren't before. Oh, I'll get into that later too. No, I have a reason for getting into that later. But Because actually, it's Flyers team to get.
I was going to say the Flyers need to stop getting into overtime and stop getting points here.
Well, the fact that they're the only, I believe they're still the only team. Yeah, they're the only team with double-digit overtime losses.
Jesus Christ.
So that's a bit of a problem, don't you think?
Yeah, if you're trying to get a top 5 pick here, that's not the way to do it.
Well, I mean, winning a game against the Washington Capitals doesn't help your case either.
Fair enough, but
either way, so like I look at Detroit and I go, there's too many regulation losses there. They're piling up a little too much. Like the 2 wins against the Flyers were actually really good for them, and
Yeah.
I don't even, I have to go check. I want to see what they've even done since then, because I think since then it's been pretty rough, to be honest.
yeah, and I think they've run
yeah,
into kind of some of those same teams the Flyers have been playing.
You know what? And the thing to remember too is, and for Detroit especially, because this is another Detroit's another one of those teams right now that I think didn't have a whole lot to do this month. Like the entire month of February was so much about making up what was not there. Like they had to throw in games that were, you know what I mean? Like throwing in the games that were rescheduled during like COVID outbreaks and things like that. So some teams just didn't get a lot of action. The Flyers being one. I mean, the Flyers had to actually rearranged their schedule, moved the Detroit game up like a week and a half, moved the St. Louis game up a week, just to kind of give it some balancing. I mean, they were supposed to play tomorrow.
Right. But we talk about the Flyers having a rough schedule recently since those Detroit games. Detroit's played Minnesota, the Rangers, Colorado, and Toronto.
Exactly. And look at what they get next.
Probably the 2 best teams in the league, and then 2 playoff teams with them in Minnesota and New York. Like, it's crazy. Yeah, looking forward, you're looking at Carolina, Tampa, Florida.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ, good luck, Detroit.
Well, they beat the Rangers for what it's worth. They actually won.
Sure.
But, I mean, and then everything else. But look at some of these wild games they've been like, no pun intended, because one of them was against Minnesota. But look at some of these games. 7-4 with 5 goals scored in the third period. Were they leading that game, by the way? No, they weren't. They got it back to 1 late. Okay.
Columbus has a chance to really kind of put themselves in the race here because they have 4 games this week. Pittsburgh, the New Jersey Devils, the Kings, and the Boston Bruins. All 4 games in the comfort of Columbus, by the way.
Well, start to circle for Columbus specifically, and I'm looking at their schedule right now. Start to circle the games against Boston and Washington. Boston in particular.
Huge games.
Because for Boston, they got 3 games left with Boston.
Wow.
So
that's a lot of swing.
Right. So there's 6 points that could go either direction here.
Yep.
And obviously, the last thing you want to do in those games is see overtime because you don't want both teams to benefit. But you have the potential here. And this is, you know what? Like, that makes me think of where the Flyers were 2 years ago. Like, when before COVID hit, like, and they were coming down the stretch, they're playing the Rangers twice in a row and Columbus twice in a row. And this is before we knew home and homes were coming in the shortened year and all that stuff like that. The fact that, like, you go into those games and you're sitting here going, take care of business against them, and you're going to put them in the rearview mirror. You're going to be done. Like,
and you're going to clear them.
This is not the same thing because, you know, they're behind them, so you have to get the points. It's not the same thing as being in front and saying.
But if you can get 2 clean points over them, it does a lot of good for you.
Absolutely. And I'm trying to see if they have any other games left against Washington on top of the one I'm seeing. I think they just have the one. Boston, they play 3 times.
Man, is that game against Washington soon?
Yes, it's one that nobody here is going to be paying any attention to.
Okay.
Because it's March 17th.
Oh, fair enough. You're right. Correct. No, I think if you're Columbus, you're hoping to play Washington this week, next week, before they figure it out. Because,
well, and here's something to think about coming down the stretch with Boston in particular, because Boston's going to be Boston's easier of the 2 for them to catch because you got the head-to-head that works in your favor.
Right. Well, I'm just going with Washington based on the last 15 games.
Oh no, I know, but I'm saying when you come out of post deadline, which means that there's certain teams that are going to get weaker as much as others could get stronger.
Right.
They have a week that starts with a home and home against the Islanders, who by all indications are going to sell a couple pieces.
Yep.
Then you have a home and home. Actually the other way around. So the away game is going to be first, and they're coming back home to play Boston twice.
Is that an away and away?
No, it's away and then home. So it's like they have home, away, away, home.
I gotcha.
Well, look, the schedule's weird.
I know.
It's because there's another home and home after this. So they play Boston twice over the course of that particular weekend. By that point, there are 4 weeks left in the season, or under at that point. Like the Friday night is 4 weeks to go. They play Boston on the road on Saturday and then Boston at home on Monday.
Some big games there.
Well, and then get this, the very next night, they start another home and home. They go on the road and then come back home with another team, and it just happens to be the Flyers.
Okay. Well, there's an easy 4 points for you. There you go, Columbus.
You would think.
You would think.
And then to top it all off after that, Detroit on the road, Montreal at home. Like, there's a stretch of 8 there where
there's some winnable games.
It's not even that's winnable. The 2 most important are the 2 against Boston that can literally swing the race.
Yep.
And then you've got 6 games surrounding it where points could be up for grabs the way if you can stay relatively hot.
Yep, and you can pick up theoretically a lot of points there.
Especially when you consider that they're going to close out the season with Edmonton, a home and home against Tampa, and Pittsburgh.
Sure, but hey, all right.
You need to kind of lay some groundwork and get there.
Speaking of picking up points, let's get back to the Flyers actually picking up 2 points for the first time in quite a while.
Yeah, so I think the point was I was starting to talk about Washington because I've seen them twice. Washington did everything they could to lose a week ago, if we're being honest.
Sure did.
It was not a very good game at all.
That team tried really hard to give that away.
Well, and then this time it's not that they gave it away by any stretch. I don't think they didn't give this game away. They didn't really show up in the first period.
No, they didn't.
I mean, that was an awful showing in the first period, and I don't know what the case was at all here, but it just was not good at all. And for me, this is at least out of the East. I can't speak for the West because I haven't seen many of the West teams in person to see an example of this. But if I go and look at the other 7 teams that are in the playoff picture in the East right now, Florida's looking really good.
Yep.
Tampa's looking really good. Toronto had an interesting game on Saturday, as we touched on. I mean, a 10-7 final is pretty rare.
That's crazy. Also, by the way, right now, February 27th, who's your pick to win the Atlantic out of those 3 teams? Because I imagine it's going to be one of those 3 teams.
I really think Florida.
You think Florida's going to keep it? Okay.
Yeah, because Tampa had a good, probably a classic game in the Stadium Series on Saturday. Like, their typical kind of game, the power play does a lot of the heavy lifting to get them in a position to win. Even the only even strength goal of the game, which was by Steven Stamkos, was to an extent a classic Stamkos power play style goal. The one timer from
it just happened to be 5-on-5.
It did, and it was off of like a kind of I won't say a broken play, but there was a lot of space because there was I think either a turnover or it was actually a good keep at the blue line that opened up some space, and they were able to just cycle it over quickly.
Okay.
And get it to the right spot, but it was the same one time, and it didn't one timer. It doesn't even get off the ice; just slid right in by the pad of UC Saros, and that was it. So, and by that point, there was 8 minutes left in a 3-1 game, and Nashville didn't come. Like, they got it back to within 1, but they didn't come really close when they got the net empty and all that stuff. So it didn't work out as it wasn't. It was a really good game. It was, but I feel like Tampa's going to have some games down the stretch if they play top teams that it's going to give them a run for their money.
Man, Tampa-Toronto is a hell of a first-round series, huh?
And listen, I also don't want the thing about picking a division winner in the Atlantic right now is I can't speak for what's going to happen in the next 3 weeks to see what they become.
That's fair.
Like, if Tampa makes one really savvy trade deadline acquisition, it could be a game changer for them in terms of the division. I mean, they're 1 point out. They're 1 point off of the division lead, and they have 2 games in hand on Florida. So it's not like it's unlikely that they get the division lead at some point. I just think Florida's actually had a rough stretch right now. Like, they played Nashville earlier in the week,
right?
And I don't want to say had a win. They didn't, but they were constantly going ahead in the game. I think they led 3-1 and 4-3 at one point or whatever, and just couldn't put them away. Like, Nashville gave them a run for their money, and I don't think that's I think those are the games in February that you don't feel as bad about. Like, you don't want to give up the points, but you go, all right, learn from it. Like, it was, it's February. This wasn't game 4 in a 2-1 series deficit that we just gave away.
Right.
It's February. Let's be, level-headed about this. No, don't overreact. Come back better the next game. And I think they did for all, for what it matters. They lost to Edmonton yesterday. So didn't they beat somebody else earlier in the week? No, they lost to Columbus too. So that's what I'm saying. They're in a little bit of a stretch.
Right.
That's 3 regulation losses this week. So they were leading that division pretty handily, I would imagine, because Tampa's won at least one, maybe two.
Yeah, the question's a lot more interesting today than it would have been if I had posed it to you last week.
Right, but I still think Florida gets it together. Like, there's just too many good players on that team already. Like, Huberto's quite possibly a Hart Trophy candidate. Barkov's been outstanding. They're getting, like, you see what a difference Ekblad makes because they lost him for the playoffs.
Yep.
Like, he makes such a difference, and it's going to be huge for them.
They're a wagon.
Yeah, and who's to say they're not done? Like, they could add, and that's the scary part. So,
and don't forget Radko Gudas.
I thought you were going to sit there and say something a little bit more, I thought you were going to say like Anthony Duclair or Sam Bennett or like somebody who I'm like,
well, yeah,
kind of egregiously probably, but like,
they're both having fantastic seasons.
Everybody, I think a lot of players on that team are having outstanding seasons. I mean, they're just a really, they're just a really good unit.
Yep, that's a team right there, and that's a tough team to take out. They're going to drag every other team into deep waters. You're not getting them out of there early. You're going at least 6 games with the Florida Panthers if you're getting them out of there.
So am I touching on Toronto as well since we're going down this list? Or what?
Yeah.
Well, no, because, okay, first of all, the only way I can describe this is by asking you if you saw, and I only saw the highlight reel. I didn't see the whole thing. But that Steve Dangle did a watch the Leafs with me.
I also saw the highlight reel.
You see, like the third period highlight reel, and
they had that highlight reel out within about 15 minutes of the game ending. Because I would imagine that was producer Drew over at Sportsnet, and he does an excellent job at pretty much everything. And so, I'm willing to bet that he had that. He figured out what was happening when Tampa scored about the 7-4, or when Detroit scored the 7-4 goal. And I think he just started writing down timestamps because he already knew. He's like, all right, this is going to be a great video.
So I don't know what part was funnier to me. First of all, the funny part was, like, as it gets to, I think it was when it was 7-5, he acknowledges that, just get ready. You're never going to live this one down either. This is the next one. Like
7-4 made him nervous. 7-5 made him panic.
Without saying the actual words, and it, ironically enough, something like we're in the same freaking week of it. Like it was on social earlier this week.
Right.
Telling you the anniversary of it. He was basically, without saying the actual words, going, get ready. Here comes the next Zamboni driver.
Yeah, basically.
And the funny part was, like, this, all I can think about now, like after watching this, I go, this team's 34-14-4 this year. That's really good.
Yep.
Why does it not feel really good? Like, because it's Toronto. Like, it literally has
right.
to say it's just Toronto, so I can't really go there. Like, everything they're doing right now, no matter what you want to say, look at it, and however
you got to win in the playoffs.
It's not going to matter until they get into the playoffs, or not get in. They're going to get in.
They can't do anything about anybody's anxiety until April.
Well, and then here's the thing. Good luck with that. When it's going to be more than
murderers.
More than likely a road series against either Tampa or Florida.
Well, you say most likely, but they're right in the, like, I understand they're not there yet, and at the current moment they're so Florida's played 53 games and has 75 points. Tampa's played 51 games, has 74 points. Toronto's played 52 games, has 72 points. So
I just don't see the others slowing down. Like, that's the thing. Like,
well, we saw Florida slow down a little bit this week. That could happen to Tampa
but
too.
The fact that they're hanging on to the spot that they are while it's happening, like, I don't think they're gonna let it get away from them. Not to mention the fact that
the fact that there's 30 games left. I mean, Toronto has plenty of time to make up the gap. I'm not necessarily saying they will, but there's enough runway left that I think they can overcome a 3-point gap here.
So, and one of the things for me, like, and we mentioned this on last week's show because it was kind of happening, or it happened the night before maybe. They've already acquired a defenseman, so they've already kind of used some of their
draft capital. Yep.
Yeah, like, they don't have, like, I'm not saying that they won't be able to make another move if they really want to, but you've got two other teams that haven't done anything yet. Now, we know Tampa is going to be probably the most cap-strapped team of all three.
Right, and they've expended a lot of their draft capital over the last 2 years.
But let's not act like Toronto doesn't push it.
Yep.
Like, they do.
They do. They wheel and deal. Well, Kyle Dubas is a trader.
Well, not only that, but I think my point also with that is that we know how much money goes into 4 players for Toronto. Like, you put a lot of a lot of the cap percentage falls behind your main guys, and that's okay when Austin Matthews is at 37 goals on a season in 52 games, which he hasn't even played in all of them because I think he's missed a little bit of time this year.
I think he missed a couple of games. Yeah.
Right, but that's what I'm trying to get. But I'm trying to get it. If that means he's played in, like, I'll go look it up really quick. But you're talking what? Even if he's played 37 goals in 50.
Yeah, he's had an obscene season.
That's freaking nature stuff, right? 49. So 40, even better.
Wow.
So he's gonna be like. He'll get to 50 in maybe like a month.
The Art Ross Trophy is fascinating this year.
Yeah, it is. It really is.
Fascinating. I'm going to pull this up. We have such a good Art Ross Trophy race this year. Austin Matthews first in the league, 37 goals. Leon Draisaitl second in the league, 36 goals. Chris Kreider, Alex Ovechkin, Kyle Connor all have 30 plus. Kreider has 34, Ovi has 32, Kyle Connor has 30.
Okay, so you're looking at the Richard actually for this.
Oh, I'm sorry, not the Art Ross, right?
Well, no, because I thought you were looking at the Art Ross for a second because of the fact that
Matthews, well, yeah, the scoring race is ridiculous too.
Saying, Matthews is in fourth at 68, and he's only 6 back of Draisaitl and 7 back of McDavid and Huberdeau.
Yeah, I think that's a big enough gap in that race that I'm willing to call that a top three.
I don't know because if you're pulling 6-goal nights,
if you're playing 10-7 games,
right? If you're playing games where you're scoring 6-7 goals sometimes, like
that's fair.
Like Edmonton's on a little bit of a roll right now, but they might just go back into the,
That's true.
They could always go right back into the bubble here,
Yeah, no, I was looking at the Art Ross.
Not that bubble, by the way.
All right. Yeah, the Art Ross, though, is a fascinating race because even outside the top 5, you got guys like DeBrincat, Connor McDavid, Gabe Landeskog, David Pastrnak. You get to a name like Troy Terry, tied for 10th place, 27 goals. Like, he's not going to win the thing, but it's impressive what he's doing, too.
No, but look at some of the names that are starting to creep up into like the top 10 for goal scoring all of a sudden.
Yep. Pasternak's there.
Oh, no,
David's there.
Pastrnak I would expect, though.
Okay.
Like
Andrew Mangiapane.
Right. Like, there you go. Andrew Mangiapane.
Honestly, and I'll say it, I've said it before, I'll say it again. Chris Kreider's a surprise in the top 3.
He's had a really good year, though.
I understand. But this is completely out of nowhere. Someone go drug test that man.
No, you know what? It's because when you play on a power play with Panarin on one side, Zibanejad on the other, Adam Fox, and I don't even care who the 5th guy is. It's probably Strome, but who cares?
Right.
Like, it doesn't matter. Like,
no, you're right.
He's net front and he's collecting goals from JVR's office.
Honestly, coming into this season, before he did what he's done, he was, to me, the most average, like, your most stereotypical NHL solid player.
I thought where you were going with it was, here's a guy who's made all-star games, but he's the most average all-star you've ever seen.
Not even that. Like, he's the most generic 85 overall.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Make a little bit of an NHL reference.
He's probably a little better than 85 overall.
Whoa, yeah, they do dynamic roster updating. I'm sure he's up to he's up pretty good right now. But
87, 88.
He probably deserves to be at 90 if he's got 34 goals at this point in the season, to be honest. But yeah, we're not an NHL ratings podcast. But either way, like, that's coming into the season, that's kind of who I pictured him as, just the most generic NHL player, and not in a bad way. It's just weird to see him break out and like you mentioned, like, he's probably going to get to 50.
Right. So, all right, we're going off on a tangent again, so I'm going to try to bring it back.
We absolutely are.
So, in reviewing the Atlantic, you don't look at a team like that, and maybe Toronto is the exception in the Atlantic, I guess, but I go to the teams in the Metro. Carolina, really good. Pittsburgh, really good. Rangers, they have their moments on occasion because they're young, but they're really good.
Yeah.
Washington is the weakest playoff team in the East right now. In terms of, that is the team that, now that I've watched them twice in person, watched them nearly lose to the Flyers the way that they have, and I go, you're a one and done.
Is the problem Ilya Samsonov?
No, I don't think it is.
Okay.
Because to be honest,
Because I know he's been criticized pretty heavily.
he's not the reason they lost that game yesterday.
No, he's absolutely not. He
close.
played spectacular hockey yesterday.
He
But I know that he's been under some criticism recently.
He might want the first one back 11 seconds into the game.
Yep.
Because that's, rough stuff. And to be honest, this doesn't mean this is his fault. But even the Atkinson goal, he gets a piece of it going up, and it actually goes off his shoulder and then hits the bar and goes in.
Yeah.
So it was a
That's
really
a tough one.
It's and a lot of stuff about that goal was tough. It was really fluky, to be honest. But nonetheless, he wasn't the problem.
No.
I don't think. I mean, I think their goaltending's a question for the playoffs, but I don't think that he's the problem. And
You think they go get Marc-Andre Fleury?
wow.
Man, think about that.
Not if they still have Vanacek, but Vanacek is a name that's being brought up as a deadline possibility.
What if he goes the other way? Sure,
I can't see
Chicago would be interested in adding him.
I don't know. I don't know if Chicago's interested in going that far with it. I really don't know.
Okay.
I mean, Vanacek to me is another guy who goes to a team that might even be borderline playoffs.
Oh, really?
Like Chicago doesn't scream that, obviously. So I'm saying, like,
probably a team out west.
Just
looking at the standings, unless it's Detroit.
Well, I can't see it being Detroit either.
Dallas could probably use some goalie help.
Do you want the obvious answer? Vanacek's the type of guy who goes to Edmonton.
Yeah, you know what? Edmonton needs the help. I think that would make a lot of sense.
I don't think that there's nothing that says that's going to happen. But Edmonton definitely wants a goalie, and you can do a goalie. You can do a lot worse than the way that Vanacek's played lately. It doesn't mean. I mean, listen, he could go to Edmonton and be awful.
Vanacek's been around long enough at this point that I'm willing to call him. He is what he is, and he's been very solid.
He has, but I think you hit the nail on the head with the way you put it. He is what he is.
Yeah.
Samsonov's the one who's got the room for growth.
The star potential.
Right. So that's why you're going to keep him. You're going to build around him. So if you want to put blame on Samsonov, be my guest. Some of those games weren't his fault. And even the game they won, because he started that one as well, because Vanacek's kind of been on the shelf. Even the game they won last Thursday, I don't know what he's supposed to do about some of those goals.
Right.
Jerry Mayhew's Mayhew's first goal was a cross ice pass on a power play. So it's the Ovechkin backdoor play, if you will, just in closer.
Right.
And then Mayhew's second goal, the third goal of the game for the Flyers, was a rebound.
Yep.
Just a big rebound, I don't want to say a set play, but Sanheim drives the net, which makes you have to stand your ground as a goalie.
Right.
And he leaves a rebound, and Mayhew was there first. That's all there was to it. There wasn't any real reason.
Nothing Samsonov could do.
There's nothing he can do to stop that. So,
the Capitals were pretty poor defensively in that game.
Well, and they're dealing with some stuff because, Justin Schultz couldn't play yesterday, and Michael Kempney's kind of finding his way back. He's getting better, but he's clearly the impact of being out for so long still is having an effect.
Right.
I mean, and look, their third pairing right now, I believe, was Kempney with Trevor Van Riemsdyk, which. It's not a heavy liability. There's worse that you can obviously look at what we watch on a nightly basis, but
fair enough.
You can do worse, but it's not the ideal lineup that they would be playing.
Right.
And that's something to consider. I mean, there were guys in general who I just don't think have their best games over a stretch. The Flyers did this a couple years ago when they had a pretty darn good run against Washington. I think they won 3 games or 2 games against Washington and lost 1 in a shootout. I think that was it. Or maybe they did play all 4 and they went 3-0-1 or something crazy like that. And right. I think didn't during the entire season series they didn't allow a point to Ovechkin or a goal or something.
Something like that. I remember it was absurd.
Well, he's played 3 games against him this year and does not have a point, surprisingly.
Have the Flyers solved Alexander Ovechkin?
No, I just think that every time they've played him, they've caught him in a bad spot.
Absolutely.
For whatever reason. Well, I shouldn't say that because when they played him the first time around in November, Ovechkin didn't even take any shots really in the first 2 periods. I think he had 1. And then all of a sudden by the end of the game had 8, I think. Yeah. So in the final 10 minutes, he was just a shooting gallery and they just couldn't beat Martin Jones that night.
Right.
I can't even begin to tell you what it was last week because when they played him here last Thursday, it was not the top guys doing all the contributing here. I mean, I'm watching a guy like Joe Snively, who is 11 games into his career, looking more dangerous at times.
Right.
You know, like
he's there, Jerry Mayhew.
He had a play yesterday that even Jim Jackson thought it was a goal.
Yep.
And Carter Hart made the save, which, by the way, Carter Hart did not play early in the week dealing with an eye infection.
Right. So, good to see him back. And
he
also played excellent hockey on Saturday.
Well, this is what's going to always be the case, right? Like, if you're going to watch anything, whenever they win a game for the rest of the year, it might as well be,
Carter Hart won the game.
Did a lot of good stuff.
Yeah. That award they give out at the end of the season, the last home game of the season, they do all the pregame awards. There's always the award for stars of the game. Carter Hart's going to win that.
He might. I don't even know, to be honest. I haven't even kept track of what it is.
Because the games that the Flyers win, it's going to be Carter Hart.
I mean, for him specifically, because you got to remember something, too. He didn't play in the Washington game. He was still backing up. He couldn't even dress for the 2 earlier this week.
Right.
So as a result of that, he's not even involved with it. So his last game was Pittsburgh, which was the 4-2 lead. You're playing really well. You're in a position to win the game. And it totally just slips away. And next thing you know, you end up with a night as a goalie where you allowed 5 goals and made 29 saves, and it doesn't look as good as it did 8 minutes ago.
Right.
It just changes the dynamic of it. And to see him get a 27 out of 28, to win a game, like, those are the things that are going to be really important for his confidence moving forward. And I don't feel like he's had a moment yet this year like last year where it was, the confidence is completely shattered. But like Mike Yo said this at one point in time, it's hard for anybody to maintain your confidence completely when you just can't seem to find a way to win. And Yo looked like, to me anyway, the type of coach right now who, when they were in the middle of the losing streak the previous time and they won a pair of games, they won back-to-back games and then started losing again. He looked like coming toward the end of that one, like, I don't even know where to begin with this. Like, it's not even to say there's no explanation for it. It's just we can't seem to put it together for 60 minutes, period, to get into a position to win a game. Like, we should be getting closer. It feels like we're doing some things better, but we really let the games get away from us. This losing streak was, the games aren't getting away from us. We're there. Right. I don't know why we can't, and I don't know why, but, he's sitting here going, we just got to find a way to finish one of these things. Like, we're there. We just got to finish it.
Right.
And in certain cases, and somebody even, I remember here, we were even talking, this was coming up in the press box yesterday. If they find a way to lose that game and it goes to 7, this would have been the toughest.
This would have been a tough one. Yeah.
Out of any of them, even tougher than the previous one, because for the most part, you're sitting here playing a team like Washington, who, whether they're playing down to you or not, doesn't matter. The bottom line is you're in that game completely. You are doing everything in your power to shut them down to, you had a great first period, really. I mean, and I turn around and look, I've been maybe just call it me being, scarred from watching so many games to know that it's never a good idea to assume anything based on the first period. But I did tweet at one point in time, hey, you know what? It's a solid start for the Flyers. It's a sleepy start for the Capitals, but there's a lot of time left.
Yep.
And you know what? I actually appreciated Mike Yo after the game saying we probably didn't attack enough. We probably held on a little too much at the end, and we're, but they did do certain things defensively. Like, they did challenge defensively further up the ice.
Yeah.
Let's make a difference. Like, you're challenging at the blue line. You're challenging in the neutral zone. You're making it harder for them to even gain entry, which is
part of the thing I noticed.
Which is part of the equation. Like, you have to do that. You can't just assume that, that you're going to be able to hold on that way. And they blocked a lot of shots down the stretch. Travis Sanheim got a stick on what looked like a sure goal for Evgeny Kuznetsov at the end.
Yep.
I mean, it was there. We all were sitting there going, here it comes, tying goal right here.
100%.
We're going to overtime.
100%.
And
yep.
It didn't get there. It didn't make it. It was a great play.
As the pass was traveling across the ice, I'm going, Flyers losing shootout. Cool.
Well, speaking of which, by the way, because I mentioned the Flyers are leading the league with 10 overtime losses.
Ugh.
Or whatever. It's the only reason they are where they are, because technically, and this would be even better if they would have lost the game to say this, because it would have just made it worse. How many teams do you think have fewer wins than the Flyers this season? Wins.
In the league?
Yeah, not points, wins.
Okay, so Arizona.
Okay.
Montreal.
Okay. So far, you're right.
I think that might be the end of the list.
You are correct.
Okay. So it's just those two teams.
There are two teams that are now tied with them that, as of yesterday, were ahead.
Okay.
So Buffalo and Seattle, yes, an expansion team that we all acknowledge was not that good.
A Dave Hackstall coached expansion team, mind you.
Right. Now, they are...
Oh, by the way, apparently fans there do not like him and want
really?
him. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
But you know what he is, right? You know that he's the first in line, and there will be somebody when they're ready to win.
Oh, yeah. He's the sacrificial lamb.
They're 5 points behind the Flyers now with 2 extra games played. So the Flyers have 2 games in hand on them, so it's not looking so good for like where Seattle is, because Seattle's down to Seattle might have at least close to the most games played in the NHL this season.
Yeah, I know they've played a pretty beefy schedule so far.
Yeah, they're tied. The 54 is the max so far.
Yeah, because there are some crazy examples where, like, if Seattle trades a player to like Minnesota, for example, that player could end up playing 87 or 88 games, and it's crazy.
We've already talked about this in the press box about how we're wondering if who's going to
somebody could play 90.
Right, who's going to get this crazy record where they've already played so many games? Because
that'd be cool, man. If I'm a member of the Seattle Kraken, I'm asking for a trade to Minnesota so I can be the guy who has that record, because that's pretty cool. Like, if you haven't missed a game yet this season, come on.
It'd be pretty funny.
I think we're gonna say it.
So either way, so the Flyers are in points anyway, ahead of New Jersey, Buffalo, Seattle, Montreal, and Arizona. And up until they actually won a game, because you know me, I've come on this show multiple times in the last few weeks and told you they were looking another 10-game losing streak in the face.
Oh yeah.
Basically, the one team that I thought was, and it makes
Chicago.
Right, and it makes even more sense today, because if they've given Washington a run for their money twice and now defeated Washington, they can beat Chicago.
This team probably should beat Chicago at this point with how they're playing right now.
Right. So those are the teams that are.
So obviously Chicago 5-1. Bet it.
Speaking of which, a game that's in less than a week now. So
yeah,
coming to Philly.
Yep.
And see, I'll appreciate that one too. That's a 3:00 start, so I'll appreciate that just as much.
There you go.
So those are the teams behind them, and for what it's worth, the Devils are 1 point behind the Flyers, and Buffalo's 2.
Okay.
I don't believe Buffalo. There's a home and home against the Flyers later this season, like later in April. So if that's the margin consistently, those games will hold meaning for draft lottery purposes.
Absolutely.
New Jersey, I don't believe there's any more head-to-heads. I think they took care of all of that early in the year.
Yeah, they cleared them out super duper early, if I recall.
But New Jersey just had a game of their own that was just like what the Flyers just did to Washington. Not nearly as close as what the Flyers had against Washington, but they went out and demolished Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Which, no, but by all standards, I mean, the Devils were finding ways to lose games as well.
Right.
I mean, down to I believe, didn't they lose to Chicago in a game that they were up 2-1, and then it was
something like that.
It was tied at intermission, and the third period, another wild one because it finished 8-5.
Oh yeah. That game was crazy too.
So you got a game like that, which is just totally nuts. Okay,
it's been a weird week.
I'm sorry. It was 4-3 at the end of the second, but it got to the halfway point of regulation, and it was a 2-2 game. So Chicago scored twice and Jersey scored once before the second period was over. And then in the third period, Chicago scored 4 and New Jersey scored 2.
And I think even the craziest headline of Saturday, over 10-7 Detroit, Toronto, over, Blackhawks 8-5 over the Devils. Craziest story is Coyotes 3-1 over Vegas? ?
Okay, so I want to point this out because these are teams. Again, the Flyers going into Saturday had 15 wins. They now have 16. Okay.
Oh, I see. Vegas had 44 shots on goal. Never mind. I answered my own question.
Montreal has 13 wins now, and Arizona has 14. The gap is getting closer.
It's crazy. And Montreal's won a bunch of games since
Montreal is on
St. Louis
fire right now. Montreal so I need to point this out because I said this. Somebody had asked what the Flyers' longest winning streak was this year, which the answer is 3.
3, right?
Okay, so I want you to try. I think because now I think it's even better than this. Because obviously this is a discussion that we're having at like 1:00 in the afternoon on Saturday, which is before the Montreal Canadiens played. Because now the Montreal Canadiens have won 5 in a row.
Yep.
So, yes, the worst team in the league as of like a week ago, who now has pulled ahead of Arizona again because the bar was set kind of low, has a longer winning streak by 2 games than the Flyers do this year.
Significantly longer. 60% longer.
And for what it's worth, they play Winnipeg next, which Winnipeg hasn't been great. And then we'll see what happens when they have to play like Calgary, Edmonton, etc. But right after playing Calgary, Edmonton, Vancouver, Seattle, Philly, Arizona, Dallas, Ottawa, they're going to win a few games if they keep having confidence.
Absolutely.
Right up to the deadline.
Well, good. That's good for them because they'll get to pump some player values and, get some goals scored for Ben Sherratt.
And for what it's worth, since you brought up Arizona, and I don't want to totally stray from that point.
Yeah.
Arizona had previously, they beat Dallas on last Sunday. And they were in a position, they were leading LA, I think, 2-1 in the third period. It got tied, and they gave up the lead with 3 minutes left.
Right.
So they were that close to at least overtime and a point, and they let it slipped away. So I kind of feel like when they played a team as talented as Vegas is, and Vegas apparently, by the way, obviously Vegas has no Mark Stone right now. They lost Pacioretty during that game. I believe Marchessault didn't play. Like, they were hurting in that game against Montreal or against Arizona. Sorry. So, like, don't be surprised here by certain things with that because, Arizona. The one thing about Arizona to me, and maybe this is why, like, for the Flyers, it was a little bit different to watch the Flyers this year when they're on some of those losing streaks, and it feels like it doesn't feel like they're doing anything. You know what I mean? Like, Arizona is always playing hard.
Yeah.
They are always trying as hard as they possibly can to win. They're just not good enough to win a lot of the time, but they're trying really hard.
Yeah.
And, you can say the same for Montreal right now.
Yeah.
Montreal's giving you a really good, honest effort, and good luck because it's making them tough to play. Like, I chalked that game that the Flyers have against Montreal next month, or this upcoming month, because it's pretty much March at this point.
Yeah.
I chalked that game up as they'll probably win that one because Montreal might be the one team.
Not so much.
Right. Well, to be like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
Especially at the time of the coaching change, honestly.
Right.
Because at the time of the coaching change, you're sitting there going,
things were bad.
It's not just that they're bad. You're going, they're really playing a wild card here with what they're doing from a coaching standpoint.
Yes.
Like, this wasn't as simple as, well, we're going to remove the current coach and we're going to let Luke Richardson ride it out for the rest of the year. Or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, this was, we're grabbing somebody who's never coached before and saying he's the guy.
Yep.
And
it's bold.
So it was very bold. And it was one of these things that the conversation was, it better not backfire. Because if it backfires, no one's going to trust the new GM, Kent Hughes. No one's going to trust this guy if this coaching move does not pay off in some way, shape, or form. So far, it's working. It does not mean that it's going to work continuously. Like, this is a good 2-week stretch, and I'm sure that everybody who's a veteran on that Montreal team has gotten a kick in the pants a little bit here.
Did you see the headline after Martin St. Louis won his first game?
No, I did not.
Okay. So he got his first win against the St. Louis Blues.
Okay.
And it was formatted kind of funny because it was St. Louis gets first win. Canadians beat Blues 4-3 or whatever it was.
Right, but it looks like St. Louis gets first win.
Right. And it was just very funny. So
I didn't realize his first win came against the Blues, by the way.
Yeah. So we talk about
they played a lot in the last 2 weeks, to be honest.
Yeah, and we talk about Arizona and Montreal showing up and kind of giving effort and being there every night, and that's been mostly the case for the Flyers too. But
lately,
right? And we talked about that, and I think the biggest reason they came up on the shorter end of that stick in these recent games when they have actually been playing a little better is quite frankly, the roster wasn't quite up to snuff. And part of the reason for that was that players were injured. And on Saturday, this is something we've touched on a little bit earlier in the show. Saturday, we got some returns. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to talk about the player I care about more. Joel Farabee's back. And if you've been listening for a while, you know that I love me some Joel Farabee. So I missed most of the first period because I was at work. But, man, the notification that he got an assist 11 seconds into being back, it just warms my heart. It just makes me so happy. And to see him assist on a clawed goal is even better. So, Kevin, didn't somebody else come back? Derek Brassard, right?
Yeah, Derek Brassard didn't. Here's the thing. Derek Brassard is back in the lineup for one reason and one reason only.
Pump the trade value, baby.
Exactly. There's no reason behind it otherwise. They did. I mean, and I touched on the other one already because Carter Hart technically returned on Saturday. He missed all of 2 games. It wasn't a big deal, but
fair enough.
But it was a big deal because of the fact that basically Martin Jones got thrown into action very last minute on Monday. Because it was announced on Sunday afternoon that Carter Hart was starting on Monday, and Monday morning, all of a sudden, at like 12:30 in the afternoon, it's
hey, where's Carter?
Carter's got an eye infection, so he's not even playing. Ustamenko's up, to back up. Jones is in, and Jones has to go and play that game, and then the next night, for what I will assume was a scheduled start for Jones anyway.
Right,
he goes back in and has to play St. Louis and does a really good job because he only allows 2 goals. It's a game that looks really bad by the final score, but there were 2 empty netters in there. Right. So he has a really strong game.
For sure. I'll be honest, I live too close to St. Louis, and that was blacked out on ESPN Plus for me.
Oh, not good.
Yeah. So if you know a link, you can send it to us on Twitter at YWT Podcast.
I'll talk to you later about that.
Okay. It's not usually a problem, but I appreciate it.
No, I know. So I think like that was an interesting thing. So he comes back. So Hart comes back too. So I want to talk about a little bit of and another piece also was I think what was it? Rasmus Ristolainen came back on Monday, which was a big deal too. Because let's put it this way:
another guy that's pumping some trade value.
Do you think? Because if I'm sitting in the Flyers front office after watching the game on Saturday, I'm sending that tape to every team that wants him.
Every team that's heading towards the playoffs. You just CC that to 16 GMs.
You know, taking out Joe Snively before team scores a goal.
Yes.
To start a rush the other way and getting an assist on it, no less.
Yep.
Probably a pretty good way to boost your value. Like,
absolutely.
Hey, this is really what I can do. No, I mean, there have been some things like, I don't know if you saw this or not. I'll throw it out here, and I'll obviously credit where I saw it because it was saw/heard it because they did it on both of their platforms to do this. So Crossing Broad had it. Anthony Sanfilippo wrote it in an article about how there was, like, to his knowledge anyway, he's got a source that says they made an offer to Rasmus Ristolainen to re-sign.
Yeah, I've heard about this, and this is
it was supposedly in writing he said 6 years, $38 million was the total contract. On their podcast, Snow the Goalie, it was more of a 6 years, and he gave an AAV, not an overall total. Okay. So the AAV was kind of like the AAV was basically the Ryan Ellis contract. It was basically a 6.25, 6.3.
Well, and that's about, I believe that's what 38 million adds up to. So I think close, that math checks out.
It's close because 36 mil is 6 even.
Yeah, I think the math checks out on that 38 over 6 years.
That's why I was a little bit confused because I'm like, that might be 6.2. I feel like 6.25 or 6.3 is probably.
But at that point, it's overall, the same number. Basically,
no, but in terms, no, it's because I think it would be like $1 million more, honestly, for the like, if you go up like another 100,000, it's almost $500,000 more. It could shift it around a little bit. Either way,
6 years. No, thank you.
The term is a problem. Yeah, the term is a little bit of a rough.
The AAV ain't great either.
No, but like, okay, so I listened to their latest episode too, and let's put it this way. I'm sure by now the regular 3 on Snow the Goalie are Anthony Sanfilippo, Russ Joy, and Chris Terrian. Terrian was not on this particular episode. He had something he's working on apparently that's coming out in the near future. But
good for him.
But Russ kind of lost his mind at that number also, that AAV. And Anthony was kind of telling him, and I'm going to kind of level with this a little bit. I know. I agree. I agree that here's the thing. I think I agree that 625 feels a little high for this team in this moment.
Oh yeah, certainly. But
for a middle pairing top 4 defenseman who's a right-handed shot, which is a commodity, who also is physical
and is massive, right?
Who also could play in both situations in theory.
Yeah.
$6 million is probably about the benchmark. He's already making 5.4, and he's going to want a little bit more.
But here's the thing.
By the way, the report said he turned it down.
Right.
So let's take this with a grain of salt.
But here's the thing, though. He's not. I'm oversimplifying here, but he's not very good.
But he's not bad either.
I know he's not, but you shouldn't get paid $6 million for not being bad.
Okay, so hang on, and here's the reason why he won't sign this, and here's the reason why everything else.
Because somebody will pay him $7.5. I know.
No, it's not that. The reason he's not agreeing to this deal right now, which is basically everything he's asking for and probably then some, is because he wants to play in the playoffs.
Fair enough.
He feels like his game is built for the playoffs. And we
have heard that report.
He feels like his game is built for the playoffs. And we all know
he's had 0 career playoff games.
But we all know this. The first game of the playoffs, the intensity and the physicality turns up to 11.
Oh, rules out the rule book.
Right. Like everything
they pretend
changes.
to call stuff for the first 10 minutes of game 1, but after that, it's straight prison rules.
Kind of. But like my point being, so he feels like he's built for that. And there's 2 schools of thought to what happens here. He either goes to a team that he ends up liking and wants to stay there because, okay, they're a perennial playoff contender. They're always there. So I'm not throwing out this as the actual team, but let's pick a team. Here's a team that I'll give only because of the fact that they now have an opening for a defenseman. Not him per se, but they have an opening. He goes to Carolina. Because Carolina just lost Tony DeAngelo for a month. And
keep in mind, by the way, that the Flyers can eat, and I know you know this, but the Flyers can eat half the salary pretty easily and get that number down to a very, very reasonable number, even for a top-tier playoff team.
Right, for the rest of the year, absolutely.
And the Flyers can easily accept a medium, an expiring contract back if it's needed to make the money work.
Right, so his theory is that either, A, he can go to a team where he's already on a perennial playoff.
Carolina would be absurd.
I don't see how Carolina would keep him after the fact, though.
I don't think they could, but my God, they'd be a wagon this playoffs.
Not unless you're getting rid of somebody else, they
just wouldn't.
At the end of the year, I mean.
Oh no, yeah, and that's fair, and they're probably not going to do that for Rasmus Ristolainen, and they care too much about analytics in Carolina.
All right, so
let's be real.
Sure, but so let's pull back on that then. So Ristolainen goes to a different team, plays out the playoffs, but uses the playoffs to do what he intends to do, or what he thinks the playoffs will do, which is maximize his game and show what kind of player he can be in the playoffs.
But why would he come back here after that?
It's not that he'd come back here. He thinks that could maximize his value even more. It
absolutely would.
Now I'm not worth 6.25 or 6.
Now I'm worth 8.
Now I'd say 7.
Fair enough.
Worth that extra 750,000, maybe an extra $1 million, maybe it's 7.25. I
was gonna say if he's on a team that makes the conference finals or better, and he scores some greasy goals, man, all you have to do is score one overtime game winner in a city, and that city will give you a contract.
But I think I'm wondering, or at least I think this might be that could be the Flyers' best offer. Already, here it is. You want to be a $6 million defenseman, kind of I don't think anybody goes in there everybody has a number in their head based on what they think they're worth, but I don't think anybody goes in there and goes I need to be labeled as this much money, you know what I mean? Unless you're a true superstar, but either way, I feel like that could be their best offer. Potentially, hey, listen. Well, I mean, they might play with this. They might not. I don't know. I mean, at the end of the day, I didn't think it was so likely he was going to get traded at the deadline. I kind of thought this was going to be
try to keep him for the aggressive retool.
Well, yeah, but because they'd like to. That I already know, but it's not. That's not what I'm thinking. My thought was that they would keep him for the rest of the year and then try to negotiate in the offseason with hey, listen, let's see how this works for both sides well, and if not, then it just became a really expensive 1-year deal, which is kind of unfortunate.
Right.
Now the idea is that this is going to be kind of like the Scott Lawton situation a year ago. And I don't want to say that it as like I don't want to say that as in that they're not actively working on a deal, but I don't want to say that as in like they're the same player or that it's the same situation, because Lawton had a lot of history here, obviously.
Right.
So there was much greater desire to keep the guy around because of that.
Absolutely.
This is not really the same thing.
Oh, if Scott Lawton goes, I'll be bummed. Like,
No.
I will understand it from a hockey perspective, but just from a personal, like, I like Scott Lawton a lot.
Look, I don't want to tell you that anybody is in particular is completely safe, but I feel like Lawton's one of the safer guys on the team. That's how I'll phrase it.
I've talked a lot on this show about the fact that I played the hell out of NHL 14. I love developing Scott Lawton in that game.
All right. So anyway, back to where I was at with this for a minute, because it's compared to that deal, so I understand why we're talking Scott Lawton. So, you get what's basically going to happen is that it would come down to the wire, and if they could work out a deal even on deadline day, he could re-sign, or if not, he's on the move. Because that's what they told. That's what Chuck Fletcher said last year. It came down to the wire with Lawton. They were either going to get that contract done and keep him around, or he was going to get traded.
Yep.
So that's what I think could happen. But I think that Ristolainen's not going to be so easy to sign because look.
He doesn't have any loyalty here.
No,
go make money.
Yeah, but it's not about the money at this point for him. It's about I spent 8 years in Buffalo, and I came to Philly thinking it was going to be a new beginning and a new start. And it was going to be a better year than this.
And it was another season of Buffalo, quite frankly.
I think that everybody would acknowledge how much injury played into that. Like, maybe if they didn't have so many injuries, they wouldn't. I'm not saying they'd be in the playoffs, but I'm saying they'd probably be more of a bubble team. Obviously.
Right, you haven't had your number one defenseman all season. Like, we've talked about it ad nauseum. It's the tagline for the season.
And at the end of the day, like Sean Couturier is done for the year, and you're going to have you'll have had him for maybe a third of your season.
Right.
A quarter to a third of your season. Kevin Hayes has barely played. You lost Joel Farabee for a month. You've lost Ristolainen at points. You've lost a bunch of guys.
Yep.
Like, it's just the way it is.
Everyone's had COVID.
Almost everyone.
Except Keith Yandel somehow.
I was to say, except Cam Atkinson too. Cam Atkinson has been like bulletproof. It feels like.
Fair enough, but I just needed the excuse to make the Keith Yandel joke.
I know. So, but I think that Ristolainen's going to put up more of a fight here with this, and it's going to ultimately lead to he gets moved. I think that that's more likely than not. And then, so you're talking about him, you're talking about Justin Braun, you're talking about Claude Giroux, and then, Brassard's back in the lineup to see if he can maximize that value before, the deadline. So if they could move him, they might. But
Rasmus Ristolainen, by the way, you heard it here first. L.A. Kings.
I don't know. I don't think so.
You don't think so? They're second in the division. The division lead is within grasp out of a weak Pacific. I think they might look at it as an opportunity. You add a guy like Risto that could get you out of the division, and all of a sudden you're in the conference finals, and anything can happen.
I'm trying to think of teams that that could add. Obviously,
okay.
I can't see them doing something within the division. I mean, Nashville came to my mind because Nashville already plays a little bit of that, has a little bit of that toughness role, but they could certainly bear to add more. I'll tell you what, and I know that they do things kind of not differently, but they're a totally different stratosphere right now. But I don't know why a team like Tampa resonates with me right now with them.
Can Tampa clear out that much money though?
No, I don't think they can. But like I'm saying, I don't know why. I feel like he's that guy who goes.
Someone gets hurt in practice. Wink.
But I feel like stylistically it would be a fit.
Oh sure. Think about these people on the ice at the same time. You got Rasmus Ristolainen. You got Victor Hedman. And then, honestly, any of their forwards. They're all bastards.
He won't play with Hedman. So, no, but I honestly, my
penalty kill time, he might play with them somewhere.
Well, I guess, but my thought was you were going to sit there and tell me Ryan McDonough with Rasmus Ristolainen.
Oof, that's bad.
Yeah. See what I mean?
It doesn't even matter who he shares the ice with. That entire team. Like, Pat Maroon could be on the ice for them. Man, that's a playoff team right there. That team has been through every ring of Dante's Inferno.
Yeah.
And is ready to go do it again. Like this is the team. This is the team that got swept by the Columbus Blue Jackets 3 years ago. It feels like an eternity ago. Remember that bubble? They were up 3-0 in Game 1. Sergei Bobrovsky made a save for the Columbus Blue Jackets, and the entire series turned on its head.
Yeah.
Crazy. I have never seen a series hinge on one single save like that.
I love how you called that a bubble.
That was the actual bubble, wasn't it?
No, that was the year before.
Oh, that was the year before the bubble. Oh, my God. Time is a flat circle.
No, that's why I'm laughing, because I'm sitting here going, yeah, you know what? That world does feel like a bubble now.
It does. Oof.
Either way. So those are the three guys I think definitely get moved. Brassard is a maybe. Jones is a maybe. And then Yandel, if you can, go for it. But I'm not holding my breath on that.
Yeah, you're kind of looking through the list and going, all right, Nick Seeler expires. Give me 2 rolls of black hockey tape and you can have Nick Seeler.
No, they'll keep Nick Seeler because of the fact that they need somebody else to play.
I guess.
So Seeler will play. I mean, it just is what it is. Either way. So you got what I did want to talk about with the players coming back also was we mentioned Kevin Hayes, or we didn't mention Kevin Hayes, but
Kevin Hayes. Yeah.
But his name came up this week. And I just don't get it.
Okay, so if we talked before, if Kevin Hayes wants to come back for a couple games at the end of the season to blow a little rust off and kind of make it so that next season he doesn't have 10 months of without game action,
right?
I understand that. There's talk about him playing next week. Kevin, no. There's 30 games left. Come back with 5. If you want to play the last 5 games of the season and call it a little bit of like an off-season mini camp for you, sure. You shouldn't play with 30 games left in the season. You should not be getting in the lineup with 30 games left in the season. There is no way he is 100%. There's no way this team's going to the playoffs. There's 8 billion years left on his deal. No.
Yeah, well, that's the part I don't get. I mean, you've already shut down Sean Couturier for the rest of the year. I would not be surprised if within the next week the announcement on Ryan Ellis comes
they
out.
officially pulled the plug on Ryan Ellis this season.
And I look as verified yesterday afternoon because I was sitting in the same press box. He is alive. He exists. He's there, but he hasn't looked remotely close to returning in ages.
Did you get close enough to make sure he was human, or could it have been a sophisticated robot?
Close enough while maintaining the proper distancing.
Okay,
if you will.
but like you saw like flesh. It wasn't like real smooth plastic. Okay, just double checking.
I only say that because they were only about 15 seats down from where I was, so I think that's close enough. I mean, there wasn't many other people on the right side of me to look down.
Fair enough.
It was a pretty crowded press box, to be honest, for injured players or whatever, because Ellis was there, Wade Allison was there, Hayes was there.
Okay. Boys showed up today.
I mean, you know what? It was an afternoon game too. It wasn't like it was a crazy, And
I'm sure there was a team dinner or something along those lines afterward.
By the way, I guess the scratches or rehabbers or whatever was going on skated in the morning before the game too.
Okay.
Which for a 12:30 game, yeah, like that's getting some really early work in then, because they were probably skating at like 9:30 in the morning.
Right.
So either way, I wouldn't be surprised if that announcement comes soon, and then you're talking. But I just didn't get it. Like, the question came about Hayes, and I'm all for positive news. I had to type out Mike Yo's entire answer because he said an awful lot that you couldn't just get across in one tweet. Like, if you just left it at, Mike Yo says he thinks it's a possibility Hayes returns next week, people were going to go nuts. I already had it happen.
Right.
People are going nuts.
Are you saying that the internet overreacts to things sometimes?
Yeah, I am.
Oh, whoa, crazy. What a concept.
Sometimes, by the way. Sometimes.
Once in a while. On rare occasion. All right. So
so he gave his detailed answer about positive news and how he's speaking to multiple people, multiple medical professionals about whether or not this is a good idea, if there's a procedure that should be had, if there's not, but he should rest, like whatever the deal is. And I almost don't care about half of it because I'm like sitting here going, I don't care what they tell him. This is, if you are thinking about the long term of this team, then you should not be back this season. Period.
Correct. Go skate laps in Voorhees.
Right, and that's the thing. I don't want to discourage the guy from skating.
Right.
Go out and practice, please.
Yeah.
Have a good time. But you should not be getting into a game where you can stretch yourself out a little bit too much here and hurt yourself again.
Get yourself all nice and warm. Practice all month. Blah blah blah. Play the last 2 or 3 games of the season.
I wouldn't even do that.
Fair enough. Go sign up and play in the Beauty League over the summer if you want.
If that, honestly, like.
And just get better. You got like I said, 1 billion years left on this contract. Try to get to a playoff series in one of them, please.
Right, I hear you. Anyway.
All right, quick look ahead.
Yes.
Edmonton, Minnesota, Chicago. I'm not going to ask you about the games because I think we know how those are going to go.
Well, I don't know at this point.
Well, okay, sure, fair enough, and we could see, kind of that better effort show up again this week. Instead, I'm going to ask you one more time: Edmonton, Minnesota, Chicago.
Okay.
Give me one player you're excited to see this week
from each team.
On an opponent. No. We might go into one on each team, but let's just start with one off the top.
I probably can from each team or close to, actually.
Okay.
Chicago's a little bit tricky, but for the first 2, I can easily do it because I believe
it's pretty softball answers.
Well, for Edmonton it is because of the fact that for Edmonton, I think the last time Connor McDavid played in Philly was February of 2019.
It's been a while.
It's been a while. I haven't seen the guy in person. I think one of the some of the recent games he was able to play. I think I was actually there for either. Like, okay. Because I didn't really start doing and I think I've said this before. I didn't really start going to every single game, going full time almost with this,
right?
Until a few years back. So
I'm kind of glad they're a little. I'm kind of glad they're a little warmed up because when Edmonton's in the dregs of it, you see it in Connor's face. He wears it a little bit, and it affects his play. So
I'm glad that they're rejuvenated from the coaching change as well because it seems like now you're getting somewhat the best version of those guys, which is a good thing, obviously. No, and here's the thing. For Minnesota, this is easy too.
Curl the thrill, baby.
Well, because of the fact that he's never played in Philly before.
Right.
So I'm ready to see that show. And you know what? To be honest, that's going to be an interesting game because of the fact that so much of that Minnesota team was drafted by Chuck Fletcher.
Yep.
So to kind of see how it pieced itself all together to a team that's legitimately in the playoff race. Kirill is the top of the list there.
Yeah. So last season or 2 seasons ago, when we were talking about the Flyers being the best team in hockey going into the break, we talked about Ron Hextall kind of being the guy who built the team.
Yes.
Chuck Fletcher is that for this Minnesota Wild team.
Yeah, but now everybody has a totally different view of the way the Flyers went, obviously. But yes,
I have a feeling there's gonna at some point Chuck Fletcher's going to get something similar from him out of Minnesota.
Well, and here's the thing: if you you got to look at it from a sense of if you like the way Minnesota's playing and you like how the young guys perform, if you sit there and look back on it and go, it's not just Kirill Kaprizov, it's Eric Sinek, it's Greenway, it's there's a lot of guys. Honestly, it's not just that, and some of that is acquisitions as well. They didn't just draft everybody that's on their team that's really good. Look at the year Ryan Hartman's having. Look at the year that Zuccarello's
Flyers legend Ryan Hartman.
Yeah, I hear you. Look at the year Zuccarello's having. Look at the year that see, you know what else is there too? Sometimes we forget, because Chuck Fletcher was there for so long.
I forgot Matt Zuccarello was there.
No, but sometimes we forget how long ago it was and how long Chuck Fletcher was there. That some of the guys he drafted are legit veterans that feel like they were pickups, like Matt Dumba and Jonas Brodin, and they're legit vets and
hardcore in their prime at this point.
Yes.
Yeah, deep in their prime.
Exactly. This isn't those are guys who have been there for a long time.
Yeah, they're mature players at this point.
Yeah.
So give me somebody off the Chicago roster.
You know what? I'll say this because the easy answer is, hey, it's been a while since Kane and Taves and all that type of stuff.
Sure.
Hagel's a guy I'd like to see.
Okay.
Because because he's been putting up some good numbers this year, and I've been curious. You know what else too? I believe that when Chicago played here 2 seasons ago, Kirby Doc was a rookie then, I think.
Okay, so I want to see how he's matured.
Yeah, and he's come a pretty decent way since. I mean, him, like guys like that. I didn't want to just say Kane or Kane. Although Kane had a hat trick recent, like in the game against the Devils, so he's starting to maybe start to feel it a little bit.
I'll say it. I want to see Marc-Andre Fleury.
Oh yeah, that's good. I didn't think about him. Yeah. I mean, I
love me some Flower.
You know why? Because why I didn't say him, because I never want to assume who the goalie is ever. I can always safely say, oh, this guy's going to be in the lineups. I mean, let's put it this way. You want to talk about Flyer legends, then Minnesota's going to be starting Flyers legend Cam Talbot.
Oh, God. And it's so annoying that he's having a good season for them. It's so annoying because he was so bad here.
I don't even think he was so bad here. He was never given a chance here. They brought him in and he got 4 games.
Yeah, you're right.
Like for a goalie, that's the pitcher who comes in like once a week if he's lucky.
Yeah, you're right. All right. I think that's about it for today. Yeah. I think we have run out of steam on this team. We talked about the games coming up ahead. We got a couple nice little home games. We'll be back next week to talk about them. In the meantime, make sure to check out the show on Twitter at YWT Podcast. Follow Kevin at Kevin_Durso. Make sure to follow at Flyerdelphia and at Sports Talk PHL for all your Flyers updates and all your other sports updates too. Heading into the maybe baseball season and, blah, blah, blah.
Don't hold your breath.
Yeah, I know. But there's great coverage of that over on Sports Talk Philly, so make sure to go check that out over there.
There will, for that one, I should say there will be whenever it starts.
Well, I mean, there's been some coverage of the lockout stuff, right?
Oh, it's not that there hasn't been. It's so much of what you can cover in baseball is like limited. Like you can only say so much. Like there's nothing. Like nobody can do anything. So there's no signings. There's no nothing. It's kind of hard to cover a sport.
Oh, right. There's actually nothing going on. We talked about that during the bubble. Like if there's nothing going on, there's nothing to talk about.
Exactly.
But all right. So anything else before we get out of here today?
Nope.
All right. Well, in that case, make sure to follow us everywhere. You can find the show on Instagram, Podbean, Facebook, iTunes, Google Podcast. I'm doing this in a weird order. I don't know where that came from. Podbean, sportstalkphilly.com. Follow the show on YouTube. Subscribe over there. I know I mentioned it a couple times, but I'm trying to build that over there and try to premiere our shows on Sundays at 8. So come check them out. And in the meantime, stay in.